It's time now for the People's Poll.
So this week...
Fascinating.
It is, yes. The views on Rishi Sunak remains divided. 30% of people saying they are favourable towards the Prime Minister, 40% saying they're not.
And on whether Tory MPs have betrayed their members by appointing Sunak as PM, 27% of those asked said they agree, 44% said the opposite.
And finally, how they'd vote in the next general election. 58% said, well, they certainly would vote. 10% wouldn't vote. I always think in a democracy, if you don't
You've
vote,
got to vote.
well, you deserve what you get. Let's talk to academic and professor of politics, Matt Goodwin, who's behind our poll, as always. Matt, good to see you. What's the takeout point for you out of all of this?
Well, good morning. Great to be with you again. The takeout point for me is that there's a little bit of evidence of what you might call a Rishi bounce, but there's not much of it. If you look at our numbers compared to last week, where our viewers might remember we had the Conservatives on a historic low of 14% of the national vote. That was, Stephen, the lowest number in British polling history. This week, after the appointment of Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, we now have the Conservatives up 6 points. But they're still at 20%. So they're 20% of the national vote compared to Labour, which is now on 31 points. So it's still giving Labour a commanding lead in the polls. It means that it's early days for Rishi Sunak. He's going to be hoping that he can establish a much more commanding lead in the weeks and months ahead. But so far, not massive amounts of evidence of a big bounce.
No, I mean, if you look at the next question as well, who would you trust to manage the economy? I mean, Rishi Sunak now at 19%. Keir Starmer still doing very well, and he's not even tried and trusted.
Well, let's just remember, this is the so-called ace card for Rishi Sunak. He's the guy who can re-establish economic credibility and competence. That's his big pitch to the Conservative Party. He is, without doubt, doing better than Liz Truss. When we asked the same question last week, only 5% of the country said, I trust Liz Truss with the economy. This week, we've got Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives on 19%. So doing much better than Liz Truss, but still trailing behind the Labour Party and Keir Starmer, who have a significant lead on the economy, which, of course, as we know, is the most important issue facing the country. So if the Conservatives don't close that gap, and David was just explaining to you why he thinks they're struggling to do that, it will be lights out for the Conservatives at the next election. They have to re-establish some leadership on these economic questions.
But what I find slightly worrying is the next point, looking at immigration, with them saying, the people who you've polled saying actually think Keir Starmer is going to perform better on the immigration issue, which seems very strange.
Well, we wanted to ask voters, look, who do you trust on immigration? Because look at the newspaper headlines this week. We've got that worrying data about Albanians crossing the channel, now the biggest group in the small boats. We've got this rumour of a rift between Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman on the immigration question. So we said, look, who do you trust? The thing that stands out for me most with that question, actually, Stephen, is that more than half the country don't choose the Labour Party or the Conservative Party. More than half of all voters are saying, actually, I don't really know who to back on immigration. Now, to me, that gives me some pretty good evidence that we have a public who are deeply disillusioned on that question, not happy with how it's being managed at all. And for the Labour Party to be ahead of the Conservative Party on immigration is, again, another worrying sign of just how weak this Conservative brand has become over the last few weeks and months. So this is a big warning shot for the Conservative Party.
What about the personal brand of the man we used to call Rishi? You asked, what is your opinion of Rishi Sunak, the personal opinion? What do they think?
Well, look, if I was in Team Sunak, I'd be saying early days, you're re-establishing your brand in British politics. The last time people really zoomed in on you was during the COVID-19 crisis. there's a lot of work to do. And indeed, our data supports that. If we ask voters, do you have a favourable view of Rishi Sunak or an unfavourable view, most voters are breaking for unfavourable. His net rating is -10, which makes him actually a lot stronger than Liz Truss. She was way down in the doldrums. Rishi Sunak is still, though, in net negative territory, meaning more people dislike him currently than like him. And Keir Starmer's ratings, remember, have been improving a little bit in recent weeks and months. He's moved into some positive territory. But this is, again, I think, a sign that if I were advising Rishi Sunak, I'd be saying, look, what's your brand? What's your image? What's your message to the British people? You've got to now establish a conversation with them, a direct conversation, and you've got to explain to the country what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're going to do it. And that's something Liz Truss, of course, never really managed to do during her premiership, something that, in a way, Boris Johnson also struggled with after that big 2019 election win. So there's opportunity for Rishi Sunak, there's room for manoeuvre, but his ratings are still net negative, which to me as a pollster is ringing some alarm bells.
Well, then, yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because obviously the gap between him and Keir Starmer, when it comes to that personal level, it's nowhere near as big as the gap between the two parties in as far as who you would vote for.
I think that's true. I think there are, as I say, lots of things for Rishi Sunak to play with here. But as you said earlier on, Stephen, in your piece, I think we all know that the landscape of the country, of politics, is going to change radically over the next 6 months. This is a guy who is shortly going to be introducing, I would bet my house on it, fairly widespread tax rises and some significant public spending cuts. So the hard bit of this premiership is yet to come. And so he wants to start in as strong a position as possible because his ratings and the Conservative ratings will take a hit. No doubt about that. They're going to take a hit over the next 6 months. So he wants to really begin in as strong a place as possible just to withstand some of that backlash from voters who say, well, hang on a minute, now I'm really struggling with this cost of living crisis and money is being taken away from some key public services. And that's going to make 2023 very, very difficult for the Conservative Party.